Good morning, everyone. It's already day 4 of this Rohatsu Sesshin. Goes so very quickly. Reminds me of the Ino's chant each evening. Time swiftly passes by, an opportunity is lost. And that's what I want to talk about today, is the swiftness of the passage of all phenomena. This very impermanence that permeates our lives, our existence. Impermanence, which is such an important part of practice. And I want to talk about it from a practice perspective. What an opportunity it is for us to see who we are. Many of you have worked on that koan. Who am I? So who am I? Impermanence and being tuned into that, being mindful of that, is an incredible tool to reveal who we are. And it's also so helpful, and I'll talk about this today, in navigating through the ups and downs of this life. And finally, it can even prepare us for the end of our life and the transitioning from this life, this moment, to whatever comes next. One of the first experiences I had with impermanence, I didn't call it that at the time, but in hindsight, that's what it was when I was about maybe 8-10 years old, and I was attending a 4th of July celebration in a small town in central Kansas. I was with my parents visiting some relatives that lived in a town of about 250. And we went to the park that day, and they had a little parade through the town. Again, there were only 250 people in the town, so it was a small parade. And there were things like, tractor pulls, rides on hay bales. There were some concessions. They were selling things to raise money for their local grange. Very nice day, that's for sure. But one of the things that I really remember was that I saw a cotton candy machine. And I'd seen cotton candy around, but I'd never actually tasted cotton candy before. So I asked my mom if I could get some, and they rolled up a bunch of spun sugar on this roll. And I took my first bite of it, and I put it in my mouth, and there was just this explosion of sweetness that I just loved. It was fantastic. But then just as instantly as I felt that and experienced that sweetness, the taste disappeared. So I'm like, okay, let me try that again. So I grabbed some more cotton candy, put it in my mouth, same thing, boom, tasted fabulous, but almost as instantaneously as the taste filled my mouth and filled my body, it was gone. So just kept doing it, kept feeding the hungry ghosts, I guess, into my mouth, and had the same result each time. So finally I thought, well, it's great stuff, but it really bothers me that the taste cannot be retained, doesn't hang around. So I took some of the cotton candy and I just wadded it into a ball, probably about the size of between a golf ball and like tennis ball, big, and I wadded it and I compressed it almost like doing a snowball. And I stuck it in my mouth, and there was, big thing of cotton candy. And I tried to chew it a little bit, and it did not instantly dissolve this time. So from my perspective as an 8 or 10-year-old, I was making progress, but it didn't taste as good when I had artificially manipulated its form as it did when I was just first playing around with it and enjoying it. So it was, it's funny, I still remember that this long later, but fast forward about another 30 years after that, and I was at a meeting for an organization that I worked for, a large global company, and I was with them ended up being with them for over 30 years. And I was with another individual. We were paired up with some other people that were being onboarded on this particular day. And one of the prevailing themes of our onboarding on that first day was that this company, that company was Pepsi Cola, was all about change. And we were joining a company that did all kinds of change. We had organizational change where we had officers were not infrequently replaced. We had a new chairman of the board at the time we joined. We had new manufacturing systems, new computer systems. We had new HR, new evaluation, new processes for evaluating our merit and pay raises, et cetera. So that was really the mantra of the day, was just how much change went on all the time. And the not particularly hidden theme was that you better be okay with change, because if not, you are not going to be able to last around here. So after that first day was over, I talked to a new acquaintance of mine that I'd met at this onboarding, and I asked him what he thought of this first day, and he said, "Well, I didn't like it." And I said, "What was it that particularly bothered you?" And he said, "Well, they said it's all about change, and I hate change." So that kind of stuck with me. And anyway, he lived in Florida. I lived in Colorado. But years later, 30 years later, I hooked up with him again. I'd seen him a few times in the interim, and I asked him about that conversation that we had had, and how, quite frankly, he had a lot of concerns about being able to even stay in the organization. And here he was, a vice president, had a very successful career. He was very well respected, and he'd gone through all kinds of change in the area that he was responsible for, people he'd worked with, et cetera. So I asked him about that, and his response to how he dealt with change was, he said, "Well, what I didn't take into account was that I changed." And that's what we can be working with as we work with impermanent, is the fact that everything is nothing but change. It certainly wasn't just Pepsi Cola that had that idea. Everybody that's living and is paying any attention at all realizes that nothing is permanent. And our bodies are no different. Our bodies are constantly changing. Cells are being replaced. We don't have the same cells, cellular makeup that we had, oftentimes in the previous day, certainly not over several years. And so we're completely replenished, completely renewed all the time due to this dropping away and rising up. There's a book by Frank Ostaszewski that I've referenced with some of you before. And Frank is a expert on working with people at end of life, worked with over 10,000, been with over 10,000 people as they've taken their last breath. And one of the things he points out as he talks about this transition of people going on to whatever we transition onto after alive is that really it's not just somebody that's alive that then dies, but it's a birth, death. Birth and death cannot be separated. And he references a Japanese word, shoji, SHO-JI. Sho is birth and ji is death. And they're separated, as he points out, by just this little line, this little hyphen between sho and ji. And it emphasizes the fact that you can't have birth without death. You're not going to have death without birth. And rather than being an isolated event where we're born and then we live as this fixed entity for however long we live and then die, in reality, there's continual birth, death going all the time. And this week, I know that you all are experiencing that, and I'm experiencing that even more acutely than ever as we spend time to sit on our cushions, to be that stillness, and we see things arise and then fall away in our minds. Thoughts will come and go, images will come and go. We may have emotions that are painful. We may have emotions or feelings that are joyous. All these things are arising, but as we do this and as we sit through this, we can just be this vessel that's experiencing it. We don't have to react to it. We don't have to engage it. And then we can keep returning over and over again to our practice, whether it's counting the breath or observing the breath or shikantaza or koan study, whatever it might be. But we personally start to experience this ever changing nature within our bodies. We're really never still. And in life, in general, there is, as I say, there's a consistent a birth and death going on as well. And I first had realized this in a poignant and kind of a sharp manner, acute manner, when a friend of mine from Sunday school died at a young age, and somewhat unexpectedly, certainly unexpectedly to me anyway. And yeah, I was I was probably about 8 or something. I'm not sure. And that event produced some real angst for me, because it was the first time that I can remember anyway where I really contemplated about what happens after we die. And I really wanted something to sort of hold on to about it. But as I explored a little bit, I talked to my brother, who was about 5 years older, about it, about death. And I said, what the heck happens after we die? And we bounced it around a little bit, and he even brought up the term, and I talked about it with him. Would we know what's going on? Would we have any kind of, what I was really doing was trying to hunt around about this notion of awareness. Would I have awareness after I die? And there was also a concern about, biggest concern I had was the fact that when I die, apparently I'm going to be dead for a very long time. In fact, apparently I was going to be dead forever and ever and ever and ever. And I just ran that through my mind about forever is a long time. And then forever and ever and ever. And it was sort of like a mantra that was playing through my head as a young boy at that time. And later, I think it was an advertising campaign. Maybe some of you know what it is. I don't what it's used for, but it uses this phrase. It's not that life is too short. It's that you're dead for such a long time. Well, it was that long time that had made such an impression on me, and quite frankly, it really rocked me. So it wasn't just being that I was going to die, but this perception I had that I was going to be dead for all eternity. Right. Well, some of you know, I occasionally facilitate 6 months to live workshop. A few of you actually participated in that workshop this past year. And sometimes I do them as a year to live, sometimes as 6 months to live. But 6 months to live parrots the idea that in hospice, where I work, that patients are admitted to hospice if they're expected to live no longer than 6 months. So to be in this workshop, the only criteria is you certainly don't have to be ill or have something that would make you think you're going to die in 6 months necessarily, but you just need to want to explore with more of a sense of urgency what it might be like as we get near and near the end of our life, whenever that may come, and to be prepared for that. And what I've observed, and those who have taken the workshop with me have observed and commented on, is that most of us share a particular concern about the impermanence that we have. And that is, we don't know what's going to happen after we die. And that's very unnerving. It can be really, really scary. And in fact, we've had people in a workshop that have left right in the middle and just said, man, I can't deal with this anymore, because they maybe had never really contemplated this to that kind of a deep extent earlier in their life. But anyway, one of the participants was a person who had practiced Buddhism, and she was not part of our Sangha, but she said she definitely considered herself Buddhist. And she was enjoying the workshop, and she said it was frightening to her, because once again, it had her face up more to the transient nature of everything, including her life. And so she visited her brother over the weekend, right before we had our next time that we were all going to meet as a group. And her brother was a fundamentalist Christian. And she told him about the workshop, and his response was, what is the problem? There's no problem. I know I am going to heaven, and I'm going to be with our Lord Jesus, and it's going to be an incredibly beautiful, peaceful place where anything I want will be satisfied. And I'll just know that I'm resting in this sacred Lord's place. And when she came back, she didn't poo-poo this idea at all. But what she said was, what I came away with, she said, after that discussion with my brother, was, I would give anything to believe what he believes. And she was deadly no pun intended, deadly and serious when she was telling me this story. And Hollywood has also gotten into the act about certainly exploring impermanence in all kinds of movies. But there's one movie that's that I wanted to reference that I saw recently, starring Ricky Gervais, and it's called The Intention of Lying. And just a brief thing about this movie is, in the world that the star lives, Ricky Gervais, no one can tell any lies. Everybody tells the truth, and everyone hears only the truth. But he stumbles upon the fact that he realizes that he could lie, and in fact, he does lie, and he takes out more money from his bank account than he had in the bank account. And for the first time in his life, he tells the teller, "Oh no, I actually do have that much money in the account. I made a deposit the other day. I guess it just hasn't gone through." And so the teller, big smile on her face, says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, here you go. Here's your money." And just gave him any amount of money that he wanted. So this was, needless to say, a pretty big revelation for him. So about the same time, his mom is nearing the end of her life. So he's visiting her in the hospital room, and she's very distraught. She's very anxious about what's going to happen to her as she steps into this unknown of death. And so he was so taken by her suffering that she was having that he manufactured this following story, knowing that she would believe him. She said, "Well, Mom, you don't have to worry. You don't have to worry. It's all going to be just fine. In fact, well, what's it going to be like?" His mom said, "Well, I'll tell you, Mom, you're going to get a mansion. You're going to get an incredible mansion." And she goes, "What will it be like? Oh, it's going to be so beautiful. It's going to have everything you ever wanted. It's going to have palatial grounds. They're perfectly manicured. You're going to have people taking care of you. You're going to have wonderful food. You're going to have a beautiful view." And he just goes on and on. Well, as he's doing this, a couple of doctors and nurse come in, and they happen to hear what he's saying. And of course, they're totally enamored too, because they think that everybody can only speak the truth. And so they spread the word. And before long, the whole community is just so excited about the fact that after they die, they're going to have this wonderful experience of getting their own mansion, and the mansion will be tailored to whatever their particular desires are, right? So, the movie it's a comedy, but there's some oomph to it as well. And I was thinking about, in my own life, about maybe what kind of mansions I've constructed as far as what might happen for me either in the future with my practice, after I die. And I don't necessarily believe I'm going to get a mansion. Don't believe that. But I think about even when I first got into Zen practice, however many years ago, a long time ago now, and I was dealing with the decline of my dad's health. He had dementia at the time, and that was kind of jolting my world a bit, because he seemed to me like someone that would just, I suppose, live forever. I just didn't even think about our transient nature. And so when this happened, it really jolted me. And he was going to. That's when I started to get into some meditation. And before I even got into Zen, but just some meditation. And I thought, yeah, this could make it so that I can really just be equanimous with whatever came up in my life, right? And so I could be Spock-like, and I could just write out the ups and downs, including my dad's death or other loved ones' death. And I could also, not be concerned about my own death, because I was going to get whatever skills, whatever training, whatever experience or realization that would buffer me from all that. So in a sense, a sense I was utilizing when I first got into meditation, and even with my Zen practice at first, that there would be some solution like that would come. And in a sense there was, but it wasn't quite in the manner that I thought it would come. And it certainly takes a lot of work. Thinking about impermanence, Thich Nhat Hanh said that he said it's not impermanence that makes us suffer. What makes us suffer is wanting things to be permanent when they are not. So it's not impermanence that makes us suffer. What makes us suffer is wanting things to be permanent when they are not. And most of us are continually, I know in my life many times through my life, when something comes up or arises for me that's difficult, it's hard for me to accept it. And I really lament the fact that it didn't go the way I wanted to go, or whether it was something at work or something with family or relationship or something like that. And it's not quite up to what I expected or needed life to be. I wanted to be a certain way. And then when things were going well, I wanted to make that permanent and be able to concretize it so that things wouldn't be unpredictable again in the future. I remember talking to someone, and actually it was my older brother, and he said when we were, I think he might have been in high school or something, but we were talking about permanence, about things not always going the way we want, things changing a lot. And he said when he took physics, he said, we can't really define time, but one thing we know about time, he said, one thing I can tell you about time is it's always against us, right? And it can feel like that, right? When we want things to be more impermanent, to move along because we're in a difficult circumstance, maybe sometimes some of you this week, when you're sitting on the cushion, have had some pretty intense emotional or physical pain. It's like, man, I can't wait for the bell to ring, right? So sometimes we want it to be more impermanent, speed up, and then other times, maybe a similar situation, you're sitting on the cushion, you're having just experiencing this samadhi, experiencing this great stillness. And then when the bell rings, you sit without getting up, you sit another period or however long, because you want it to just stay, right? But one thing is that most of us, in my experience, people I know, times of my life, etc., would like things to not be so constantly changing. Sort of like my friend from Pepsi when he first started, he didn't like change, right? And some people do, but many people don't like it, particularly having things change when they think they're really riding high. But what we can do in our practice, in our life, as we're being aware more and more of what's really going on here with this impermanence, we'll talk more about this in a minute, is that we can give up our need to really fight reality, because when we fight reality, and impermanence is reality, we're going to lose that battle at least 100% of the time, right? I mean, we're not going to win at that, and yet over and over and over again, we seem to have to get this lesson. I know I do. That, gosh, this is, why am I going to fight it? This is the way things are. And really, I think Joko said, probably other people said this too, but the one thing we can really depend on in this life is for this very moment to be just as it is. We can depend on that. Everything else we can't depend on, but that we can depend on. And so what we can do then is realize, okay, this life is ever changing, our body's ever changing, everything around us, the universe is changing. And what we can do is just jump right in with both feet, with more than our both feet, our whole body, our whole heart, our whole everything, and experience this very vibrant, changeable, dynamic aliveness that is each moment. And going back to that point about shoji and the birth and death, that birth and death is going on every moment. This moment's going away, a new moment comes up, that freshness, that aliveness, right? In the movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, he keeps reliving the same day over and over and over again. And he tries to kill himself many times during this movie. It's a comedy movie, but it has some serious overtones. And he tries to kill himself and actually kills himself, he thinks, each day, and then wakes up the next morning and he's living the same day over and over and over again. Well, I guess in one sense, that's concretizing your life. That's being able to have life that's not, where you're not having to experience much in the way of impermanence, always repeating the same day over and over again. But guess what? That was hell. And in having this freshness, having this ever-present change, this impermanence, with all the challenges it presents, also it is an incredibly exciting ride as we learn to dive more and more into it and experience all the various ups and downs and ramifications of this life. So let's talk a little bit more about our Zen practice and how that can help us receive and even embrace our impermanence and the impermanence of everything, right? And as a corollary to that, get away from the idea that we have to control things, right? We can sort of go on vacation as we get more and more into this. If we can't maybe embrace it, at least receive this impermanence, realize that is reality. We can not have, we're not trying to control anything anymore because we accept reality. So why worry about controlling it? We know we can't control it anyway. So as we're sitting on the cushion, it's a wonderful time to practice with this, because we see, especially by about this long into the retreat, and some of you probably are able to step right into it almost from the beginning of this week. But we start to see this arising and falling of thoughts, emotions, feelings, pain, happiness, blissfulness, sadness, all these things, right? And maybe have a little insight working on a koan, just kind of pops up there, right? Different things that are happening. This birth, death, this shoji, just going on all the time, right? Nothing static about it. And even when you're sitting in stillness, you think, well, I'm not doing anything. I'm just sitting on this cushion in stillness with some other folks that are supporting my practice, like I'm supporting their practice this week. We're all sitting together here. We're all moving into this unification of this one mind, right? That's what we're doing. And yet with all that, we also can sense and appreciate this vibrancy, this liveliness, and this constant change that's going on here. You know, there's a phrase that Shishin Roshi has taught and expressed for many years, ever since I've known him, and ever since I've been here with the Sangha. And it is, he will say, I'll give you the secret to Zen. The secret to Zen is just keep going, just keep going. And when I first heard that, I thought, okay, I'm going to do that. I'm going to sit every day. I'm going to not miss time. I'm going to try to sit for a certain amount of time every day. And that really stuck with me, and it became sort of like just brushing my teeth. It was just something I did every day, and I didn't think about it other than I didn't want to miss it. But over time, you know, there's a lot of different ways. I won't go into all the different ways, but about that you can look at that phrase. But one of the things that I was missing for a long time from what he was saying, I believe, was that just keep going doesn't just mean keep on practicing, keep on doing exactly what you're doing. Doesn't necessarily mean that at all, because what you are just doing, you might just be stuck, and you might just be like having your tires stuck on a snowy day, and they're just, you know, going around, you're spinning, and you keep hitting the accelerator, and you get stuck even more, right? So just keep going is certainly an appreciation, reflects an appreciation of impermanence, because the universe is still going. You know, reality is still going. It's constantly changing. So if we try to resist that, that's not going to work very successfully. So in our practice too, it's so important to be able to not get stuck, and that's where having a teacher like our Roshis is so important, because it's not easy to see ourselves objectively. And when we are stuck, it's easy to miss the fact of what's going on there. So another point I just wanted to mention is it's easy for life to pull us back into kind of dualistic thinking, and it's think that it's us against the world, and why is this happening to me, and this is unfair, I can't believe this person did this to me, well, I can't believe I'm in this situation, those sorts of things. And even after we practice for a long time, things like that can pop up, and it's certainly important to be able to have compassion with ourselves on that. But just staying with our Zen as that notion of just keep going, don't quit, don't give up, and eventually, you know, we'll get unstuck, and we'll be able to see more and more once again what's really going on, and not only what's really going on the cushion, but off the cushion as well. And part of that involves being able to delve into real challenging situations that come up, really delve into them. And rather than stuff them, rather than push them down in the metaphorical basement, really embrace those, experience those. And The Roshis wrote a book a number of years ago, and many of you, I think, or a number of you are familiar with it, the Great Heart Way. And part of the Great Heart Way was this notion of when things come up, things that are maybe stored, or not maybe, are stored in our body, okay, but we may not even know that we've stuffed them or stored them away, but perhaps something from our youth, something that really doesn't even apply anymore, we wouldn't even believe in, and yet it's stuck in our body, and it creates a disconnect and a stickiness between ourselves and what's really going on in the universe, what's going on in our life. And we can perseverate over it, and it can cause us a lot of suffering. So, but I'd certainly encourage you to read that book, and also certainly something you can talk about in Dokusan about it. But this idea of being able to dive into our life, dive into this impermanence. So even as we're having difficult times, don't push them away when we're on the cushion. When it happens this week, just observe them. You don't have to engage it. You don't have to, it's not a matter of, oh, I want to try to come up with something difficult and see if I can stop it. No, but as things come up, just observe them. Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. There it goes again, just like you also can observe things that you consider very pleasant that come up. Don't have to engage those either. So just observe and start writing, continuing to ride this birth and death of all these different things that are going on. Really experience this liveliness, this vibrancy of this, of our impermanency. I don't mean to imply that any of this is easy, because it's not. It is simple. I don't think it's a difficult thing to grasp. But what is in our practice, it can be so helpful. But at the same time, it takes a lot of work, and it takes much repetition over and over and over again. We may struggle not 10 times or 100 times or 1,000 times, but 10,000 times. And so what? We just keep going. We just keep doing our best, and we have some compassion about that, so we don't feel that we have to be a certain way within a certain time frame. And there's a book that I was introduced to recently, and it's by Pema Chodron, and the title of the book is "How We Live is How We Die." It's quite a new book, I understand, and it's an interesting title. How we live, being able to be present, to be in reality with all the ups and downs of life. That certainly can be very helpful as we get near the end of life, and be able to, as we need to let go of things because of physical challenges that we have, illness that we have, we can embrace those, like we're talking about, the experience we get doing that this week. But I also thought, she also worded that differently. She could have said, and I love Pema's books. She also could have said, not how we live is how we die, but how we die is how we live. Meaning that as we embrace this letting go that is so necessary in our practice to avoid getting stuck, that is, in essence, dying. That's that birth death. We can embrace the dying, things I have to let go of. My vision's fading. I'm not going to be able to drive anymore. I can let that part of myself die. That desire to be able to drive, I can let that go. Or my hearing's failing, or I have a particular disease that limits my challenge, my abilities, all kinds of things that we need to let go of. And whether we're little kids or whether we're elders, whatever we are, we have lots of opportunities to let go and to, in essence, die. Of course, in Zen, we hear classically about dying on the cushion and then having a waking up experience. But we can also have these more incremental wake ups. Again, when we get struck by that Kiyosaki of not seeing what's really going on and feeling this tension, and yet having that wake us up a bit to re-enter reality, re-enter the present moment. What I'd like to do now is just take just a couple of minutes and do a little, ask you to close your eyes, please, and just be still. And I'd ask you to just think about a time when you were a young child. Maybe you were 6 or 7 or 10 or 12. Just pick a time and a memory you have of being that child. And what was that like for you? What did you like to do? What were your favorite pastimes? Just reflect on that for a minute. Are you happy? Are you sad? What are you feeling in your body? What are you feeling in your body as that child? Do you feel any tears? Do you feel joy? Okay, now open your eyes. You know, we already talked about today the fact that our bodies are always changing. I certainly don't look the same as I did when I was 8 years old. I don't even look the same as I did yesterday. Always changing. So our cells are changing. Our knowledge is changing. Our capabilities are changing. Our memory is changing, maybe getting better, may not be as strong. We're a lot taller than we were when we were little kids. We put on weight since we were little kids. You just revisited what a memory of what it was like in your childhood for just a minute there, a minute or two. So I'd ask you to contemplate, just contemplate at some point, where is that child that you just revisited? Where is that child now? Your body's completely different. Your thoughts are different. You're just listening to me right now. You weren't doing that then. Where is that child? Where did he or where did she go? Is she or he still here? Are they dead? Were they ever alive? Are they nowhere? If they're nowhere, what is this nowhere? I want to wrap this up, and I want to share a couple of different views on impermanence. They're not right or wrong views. They're just some things that I came up with based on just on my experience and my changing in life on the way I look at impermanence. So I'll share them briefly. The first view is this: I am a separate and distinct living being. And like everything else, I know I will eventually die. I also understand that everything is constantly changing all around me, but I have to be ever vigilant since I'm not changing. And there are so many things in life that if I'm not careful, could bring me more suffering or bring my life to an abrupt end. My biggest fear is that when death comes, it will annihilate me and there will be nothing left. And then the second view of impermanence. I have experienced directly the reality of my situation. And it is not fixed. It is constantly changing. And I too am this constant changing. I experience that there is no fixed thing that can live or die. I don't need to control anything since I have learned I cannot control reality. But I still have to continually practice with accepting this moment as it is, rather than resisting it when I don't like things. I can relax much of the time, since although I do work for change I care about, I am experiencing in my life that all I can really depend on is that reality will be as it is. And my practice focuses more on opening up to this fact. From the Diamond Sutra. So you should view this fleeting world, a star at dawn, a bubble in a stream, a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, a flickering lamp, a phantom, and a dream. Our beautiful impermanence. This is our life as the Buddha.